Welcome, everyone. I am Pete Mathias, a partner here at Alumni Ventures. We all feel it. We face critical times for the United States. We face critical times for the world. So we are doing what Alumni Ventures does best: bring together community, the curious, the caring, and the committed on the United States and our strategic tech interests. We are doing our best to answer a critical question: what capabilities and what competencies does America need? And with that, we have the format today to do just that, to begin to explore from cul-de-sac to Constellation, the top frontiers in US strategic tech. This is far-reaching. It is not just about defense technology. There are critical areas of energy security that we will discuss. There are digital frontiers. There are physical frontiers. There are things down the street, and there are things in the stratosphere that are all relevant to the United States, our security, and our prosperity. This entire initiative, this community, is oriented around a big question. And today, that question will be our North Star. It'll be our line in the sand. Where should the United States be investing in terms of technology? So today, I'm totally thrilled to introduce the nodding heads in a moment here, Laura and Drew. But the three of us share presumably what you share, which is a civic-minded attitude and a deep interest in the investor potential also in this space. So with that, we will get started officially today, but very first, a very quick reminder that this presentation is for information purposes only. It is not an offer to buy or sell securities. And I will point everyone to that little link down in the bottom right, avfunds.com/disclosures, for you to read through this at your leisure. So with that, drum roll, let's kick things off officially. What will we cover today? You're gonna meet Drew, you're gonna meet Laura, you're gonna even meet later in the presentation a colleague who is an elected official in his hometown. I'll save that surprise for later. After meeting the team, we're gonna double click into US strategic tech fund themes. What do we see as the potential areas for investment and for focus? We're also gonna do our part to share with you what we know, what we have learned about venture capital and how it can be a very valuable piece to your portfolio. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about not just this community, the strategic tech community, but the investment fund that we will be launching down the road. So with that, let's get into meeting this dream team. As I said, I'm Pete. A little bit more about myself. I come from a long-term policy and innovation background. I like to say I've spent a lifetime in this space wearing different hats. One of those hats was as a collaborator with the US Department of State. I did this in 2 presidential administrations, everywhere from the deep parts of Russia to the Middle East to South America. I also had formal academic training in government and policy, a proud student of the Kennedy School. And that mantra, ask what you can do, has led me into doing venture capital and very, very focused on areas of innovation, entrepreneurship, and pillars of American power. So with that, I will now hand it over to my incredible colleague, Drew, who will share a little bit about his civic-minded background. Drew, take it from here.
Awesome, thanks, Pete. And I will admit that one of the things that I don't love about this webinar service is we don't get to see everyone's faces. And as Pete mentioned, as we'll talk about in the rest of the presentation, a big piece of kind of establishing this fund is also establishing the community. And so I hope you continue to join us in kind of community conversations like this. And we have some opportunities to kind of meet in person or at least face-to-face going forward. But cool, thanks again, Pete. Just a little bit on me. So I've spent the last 7 years with Alumni Ventures, where I've really seen the growth of this network to include innovators, operators, experts, investors, all within a number of verticals, from semiconductors and energy storage to aerospace and artificial intelligence. And at the end of the day, innovation is at the heart of kind of the American spirit, and that's how we see it. And we've been hyper-focused on the industries that support this country, not just in its protection from adversaries, but in a promise of real technical progress. And that's, you know, even if it wasn't explicitly stated, been kind of a core tenet of Alumni Ventures since the very beginning. We understand that a stronger America demands kind of continued effort and engagement from all of us. So prior to my time with AV, I actually worked on a number of different national and local political campaigns, primarily focusing on small business and entrepreneurial policy. When the COVID pandemic hit and it led to a rise in mail-in voting in 2020, I worked with developers and policy officials to build an app that actually educated voters on that process, all in this kind of larger effort to drive engagement and community around, you know, one of our core civic duties. I will pass it off to Laura now, and it's great to meet everyone.
Yeah, welcome. We're so glad you're here. So as a longtime VC, I look at the sectors of the US Strategic Tech Fund with unbridled excitement. So much innovation is happening in cybersecurity, national defense, and space tech right now. We're launching this fund into an energized founder community. Perhaps you've seen, like me, in the New York Times and other media, so many reports about this focus on national security. So this is a right time, right fund opportunity. And it's also the right team. So I know Pete and Drew pretty well. You guys are just getting to know them. But one of the things that I love about working with both of them is that they create energy. Sometimes that energy is in events. So I'll give you a couple examples. In the New York office for Alumni Ventures, Pete kicked off a couple of really critical stirring the pot events. One was around nuclear. It was probably the biggest collection of nuclear investors and founders and interested people that New York has ever seen. Drew, in his way of translating to an audience, has created material like on TikTok about fusion. So fusion, really, like national security issues don't get much more intense and deep tech than that. What did it hit? Few 100,000. How many viewers, Drew? Go ahead.
2.5 million.
2.5 million. And you'll hear more about a cybersecurity event that happened just last week, the CHIPS event, and that brought together program managers from the CHIPS program, one of our CEOs, and one of the NVIDIA partner managers. So that kind of energy is really behind the scenes here. Yes, we love the investments that we're about to make, but you don't get to those unless you're creating community and energy and engagement between founders and funders, and that's what this team does. With that, let's talk about why a US Strategic Tech Fund in the first place.
Laura mentioned the team, but let's zoom out. Alumni Ventures. Why is Alumni Ventures doubling down here? First, we are one of the most active backers of American innovation with over 1,300 startups. That puts us at the top of the tables of some of the most active venture capital funds. Importantly also, according to PitchBook, we are one of the 10 most active VCs in areas of defense and aerospace, for example. So you get the sense already of our civic commitment. But let's double click on more the investment trends and also what we see as the opportunity. The impact is obvious. We've talked about from cul-de-sac to Constellation, all of the exciting entrepreneurial energy that is happening here. But there's also very clearly a widening market. The government, as one example, within the DoD, has outlays that are now coming very close to $1 trillion in forecasted spend, and that is just in defense. Cybersecurity also tracks a massive growth area for government, also for innovation. But we said that this is not just about defense security, that there is a very broad use case of pillars of American development. And this is where we see quite a bit of opportunity as well. As just one example, look at the global energy security market. This is something that we've talked a little bit about fusion. Drew's certainly an expert in that space, but we see a lot happening in that alone, widening use cases. The government tailwinds, if you read any of the pick your publications, you see this. Congress is active, perhaps more active than we've seen in decades in backing innovation. And we see this all the time in the different grants, the small business innovation research grants as one example, the CHIPS and Science Act as another example, 52 billion in subsidies for US semiconductors. So you put the impact alongside of the market opportunity, alongside of government as a key collaborator and partner, and you see us and you see other venture capitalists spending more time and doubling down here. When Drew and I were in DC a few months ago at one of the biggest meetups of venture investors and DC tastemakers, we saw this front and center. We had that front row seat to see how much activity is happening. So that tells you why. First, AV has always been doing this. We're super active backers of American innovation. But two, we're at an inflection point where we feel it's time to double down, bring you into the community, and share more with you about some of these initiatives. So we're now going to dig a little bit more granularly. I love to get granular and get specific about what exactly we see, more of our thesis in the space. And with that, I'll bring back in Drew to walk us through some of those strategic interests.
Yeah, absolutely. So you heard Pete talk a lot about a number of different industries. There's a ton of opportunity here in kind of this broad sector that we're classifying as US strategic interests or US strategic technologies. And rightfully so, it's broad and diverse. It's all the things that impact America domestically, abroad, you know, from the cul-de-sac to the Constellation. And so when thinking about this fund and where we want to spend our time, but also how to kind of consolidate those themes to better educate the community, we looked at the current venture markets. Luckily, we're one of the most active VCs in the world. And so we have a pretty good sense of kind of what the venture markets look like to define these three key pillars that you see on the screen. And so the first one we are defining as homeland security. So domestic infrastructure like energy, manufacturing, industrials, transportation, but also technology for local, state, and national government agencies, public safety, disaster response, things that benefit from new innovations in tech. That's this homeland security piece. The second pillar, cyber, AI, digital strategy, advancements in machine learning have brought entire industries into the digital realm, not just kind of the cutting edge companies, but the manufacturing industry, you know, government agencies are all bringing AI and machine learning into their everyday. And so what that means is there's a lot of data, a lot of sensitive data that's flowing around. And so we're thinking about how is that data protected? How are companies building competencies kind of in their digital strategy? And what does that look like more broadly? And then the third piece here, so we've kind of almost gone up from literally the cul-de-sac to the Constellation. The last pillar here is space innovation. And so the dramatic decrease in launch costs, largely thanks to SpaceX, there's more stuff going into space. And this is no longer the result of a science project. It's no longer just cool. It's becoming a very pivotal theater for the DoD and for corporates. Geospatial intelligence, space-based delivery, even mining or kind of other forms of transportation that are all happening in space. It's becoming this crucial frontier that a lot of different folks are spending some time in. Cool. Next slide. Let's jump into each one of these sections a little bit more deeply. On the homeland security piece, so again, these are kind of our domestic interests, manufacturing, industrials, energy. This is the bedrock of national resilience and prosperity lies really within this pillar. This is our industrial backbone, manufacturing prowess, energy independence. Pete touched on kind of this large energy transition that's happening. And then finally, that seamless kind of operation of government functions that are critical to public safety. So, you know, technology for local law enforcement or first responders. It's about reinforcing the arteries of our economy and the shields of our community, ensuring a robust defense against physical and cyber threats. So we have that digital strategy piece, but you'll notice there's plenty of overlap between a lot of these pillars, and rightfully so. So investing in this category means fortifying the foundation upon which our society stands, ensuring a future that's prosperous and secure. from a number of different threats, but also just building general resiliency. That's this first pillar. We'll jump to our second pillar, which is, again, digital strategy, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. It's been turbocharged by a digital data explosion and breakthroughs, as I mentioned, in machine learning, pushing the boundaries of what machines can do. The global AI market's projected to reach almost $500 billion. Autonomous systems and autonomous vehicles are redefining efficiency in logistics, manufacturing, and cybersecurity is becoming this larger and larger shield guarding kind of that digital existence. Worldwide user end spending on security and risk management is going to reach $215 billion this year. So there's this large kind of global race, not just for AI supremacy, but also kind of cybersecurity supremacy. And we will jump to our final pillar here, where we're looking at space. And so again, space here we're seeing is kind of catapulted by the democratization of space. And so the underlying tailwind for, why space now and maybe not why space 10 years ago, is that cost piece. It's much easier to get objects, intelligence, transportation systems, modules into different orbits. And that's seen as an opportunity, not just from the DoD, thinking about our resistance to other nations or adversaries, but also supporting kind of key functions here on Earth, whether that's geospatial intelligence, understanding where threats are, or also understanding where mining companies need to go or where energy needs to move to. And so this is a broad market that is, again, almost $500 billion in 2022. That was up from $200 billion in 2010. So an area where we're seeing a lot more economic value growing, and where the national kind of security interests are certainly intensifying. I will pass it back to Pete to talk about some of our flagship investments.
So we've walked through why is AV doubling down. We've double clicked into where we see opportunity. Now we want to give you actually a glimpse, a preview, a sneak peek into companies that will actually end up in the portfolio. So these are two investments that Alumni Ventures has already made, which will eventually make their way to the U.S. Strategic Tech Fund as our flagships. And what you will see when you hear about these companies is the breadth, the diversification of these assets that we are assembling. They're not necessarily narrowly in one sector or the other. And as you'll see, the stealth company that we'll talk about is not just in security, but also that the competencies extend to the factory floors as well. So I'm going to bring back in Laura and Drew. In fact, let's start with Laura. You can tell us a little bit about Edge Scale, and then Drew, since he just went on a cool trip to Southern California, he can close it out. So Laura, tell us a little bit about Edge Scale, the founding story, and give us a flavor for that investment.
I'd love to. Edge Scale is massively exciting. I'm really glad this will be one of our first two investments in the U.S. Strategic Tech Fund. So an example, this is a company that's getting its first institutional money in the round we joined, and they have a $50 million contract with Palantir. That's what kind of company we're talking about. It sits at the intersection of three meaty challenges: connectivity, edge computing, and AI, with a breakthrough plan to manage edge scale computing using networks and the ability to manage that better with AI. This is really a breakthrough company. We invested in that first institutional raise. And how did we get so lucky? How did we get in? Because I think this is the critical part about how Alumni Ventures comes together. It was indeed an alumni connection. Specifically, the founder is one we had backed before. So he is a Dartmouth grad, and we had invested in our Dartmouth-centric fund, Green D. And as this founder came back for his next trip down the startup path, we were one of the first calls, and we were one of the first checks in as he starts EdgeScale's journey. So to confirm, this is one of the first companies that we're putting in the portfolio. And while it's still in its own way in stealth, the fact that it has a $50 million contract from Palantir is a great way to come out of the gate.
Thank you, Laura. So we're going to go from factory floor to the frontier. And with that, Drew, I'll bring you back in and you can tell us a little bit more about this stealth company that we can't quite reveal yet, but is going to be in the portfolio as well.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully we can reveal this soon, but for now this is stealth, so I can't share the name. But I can describe to you what the company does, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but maybe Pete can even talk a little bit more about kind of how we got into this one, because this is certainly a competitive round, similar to EdgeScale, as kind of Laura just mentioned, so similar stories there. What this stealth company is doing is they're an integrated hardware and software platform for defense applications. So right now, servicemen and servicewomen rely on different sensors, sources of data, all to make decisions in real time. Data is not only important, but it's how they receive that data and how quickly they can receive it is also tremendously important when the threat could quite literally be life and death. And so capturing all this available data to make those decisions is important. And right now it's living across different sensor platforms. So you may have a drone, you may have a camera, you may have a LiDAR sensor. And in many cases, they have their own kind of software ecosystems that those warfighters have to look at and have to engage with. And it's spread out for the user. So what this company is doing is they're bringing together data from these silos to bring the best information available to the fingertips of our soldiers, and eventually probably a number of other different industries, with both a hardware and a software piece. So they've kind of developed this mass scale hardware. It looks like a big case. You can connect it to different sensors. And it's a really great function for kind of combining all these different data silos that currently exist. Pete, do you want to talk about how we got into this one?
Yeah, we are very dedicated to building ecosystem here. Drew, myself, other peers at Alumni Ventures are regularly and routinely building relationships, not just with builders, but with backers too, with other investors. So this investment came through one of our peer investor channels who saw the merit in the Alumni Ventures value proposition. We have an extraordinary pitch to companies at all stages. In this case, in the early stage, having a community at Alumni Ventures, not just of 1,300 portfolio companies, but over 600,000 individuals. This is an unfair advantage. And unfair advantages are what win you competitive allocations. So that is how we won this allocation. And you'll get the sense here of many stories that result in Alumni Ventures winning competitive allocations, different reasons, whether we backed the founder before, as Laura said, or we are deep in the ecosystem, as Drew just said. So with that, we're gonna move on to actually give you a flavor for investments that are already in the AV portfolio that first illustrate AV's existing competency and expertise and experience in this, but also that can give you a flavor for potential growth investments that may end up in the portfolio. Zooming out, 2/3 of the investments that we intend to make will likely be early, in other words, seed and Series A, and 1/3 will be growth. And so what you can see here are some logos of companies that, since they are already in the AV portfolio, may actually end up as a follow-on investment in which the Strategic Tech Fund will participate. So these are really 5 hugely exciting companies that will show you that sector diversification, but also the business model level diversification. These are very different companies from each other. Unstructured is in AI, Red 6 is doing things in AR, VR. You'll get a sense of all that diversification in a moment. I will start off with Red 6. and then the rest of the team will come in. Red 6, the story starts with the chairman of the board. The chairman of the board for Red 6 is former commander of the Air Force, U.S. Air Force General Mike Holmes at the very, very top. Why does General Holmes pick this as his company to put his name on and to support as a leader? Because Red 6 is doing something that the military needs, but also has extraordinary technological potential. This is an AR platform, augmented reality platform, that pilots can wear at altitude with a synthetic overlay, meaning the pilot can still see IRL what is in front of them, but with various training environments ahead of them. What do I mean? It could be a pilot training for a mid-air refueling. It could be landing on an aircraft carrier that doesn't exist, but actually is synthetically overlaid to that environment. It's a fascinating company. So General Holmes at the top, it's actually founded by a British Air Force, US Air Force pilot himself, a remarkable entrepreneur. But it also has what we look for at Alumni Ventures, really, really strong investors at the table. Who are those investors? Well, it's the likes of Boeing, it's the likes of Lockheed Martin Ventures, some really, really great financial investors like Alpha Edison. So this is a characteristic investment for the strategic tech for us. And as you'll see as we march to the right here, many, many different business models, but all unified with that answer to that question: what are the critical capabilities that the US needs to make it more secure and more prosperous? Red 6 checks that box. So to tell us how it checks the boxes of other companies, let's go over to Rigetti. And Drew, I'll bring you in for that one.
Yeah, great. So jumping from kind of AR, VR for pilots to new forms of computing. So Rigetti is doing integrated circuits for quantum computers. They also have a cloud platform called Forest that enables programmers to write quantum algorithms. So kind of a really big initial piece for an industry that's kind of still developing and still growing. But back in December, this company, they launched their first commercially available quantum processing unit, or QPU. This was after they delivered a 9-qubit QPU, which is pretty impressive, to Fermilab earlier last year. So one of these companies that's really just kind of on the cutting edge of what quantum computing looks like, a new paradigm in computing that will kind of further increase what we're able to do with technology. And I will keep that one brief because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions and comments at the end. And I'll jump to the next one unless anyone has comments on Rigetti. But
yeah, just look at the beauty list of co-investors. So Bessemer, Andreessen Horowitz, Y Combinator, Founders Fund, right? I mean, that's part of this as well. So yes, but let's hear more about Galvanic. Can't wait.
Cool. Yeah. So Galvanic, this one, when I tell you what they do, it sounds like it's in direct response to when we talked about kind of the different pillars that we're looking at. So when we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about manufacturing, kind of the American industrial base. What Galvanic is doing is they're securing industrial operations and minimizing cyber risk for factories. So what we've seen is over the past 20, 30 years, industrial enterprises have replaced their manually operated equipment with computer operated equipment. So you can think about this as like robotic arms, but everything just in how a factory works is now done pretty much digitally. And they're trading that increased efficiency, which they certainly do get increased efficiency, but you're getting some potentially kind of catastrophic downside risks. And I'm talking about kind of the manufacturers that have gone into this digital world. And so what Galvanic is doing is they're protecting these systems. And so they're creating cybersecurity specifically for kind of manufacturing and industrial base, because these are systems that are frequently under cyber attacks. So things that could compromise, drug manufacturing. They could turn off safety systems at an oil refinery, spoil millions of pounds of meat, costing billions of dollars. And these are things that have all happened over the last few years that have cost over kind of billions of dollars each year. More specifically, how it works, they're collecting telemetry data from across industrial environments. They're analyzing, they're correlating, and detecting malicious behavior there. We actually participated in this company's seed round last year alongside Founders Fund, so a really kind of strong co-investor, lead investor here when we think about U.S. strategic interests. I'll jump it back to Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to chime in, Pete?
No, I Unstructured is one of my favorite companies of all time. So I was tempted to take the thunder, but Laura, you got this. So please tell us about Unstructured.
Yeah. So on the surface, it's easy to understand what Unstructured does. They take messy, heterogeneous data and structure it for AI. However, under the hood, the magic that this team has built and the depth of the technology means that their first customers were all in the defense industry. So that higher bar of expectation of security and complexity that the defense industry requires means that this company is poised to be huge, candidly. And the round we joined reflected that. Very much oversubscribed. We joined the Series A led by Madrona. When we say oversubscribed for a round, what that means is the CEO has gathered so many investors that are excited to invest that they get to be, in this case, Brian gets to be very choosy about who he brings to the party, and we made our way in. And that is in part because of the alumni connection. So he's a Tuck grad, as is Pete. There's a good connection there. The lead investors at Madrona and Bain Capital are crawling with Dartmouth alums. And so we used that alumni connection to get the conversation started and then proved our worth to Brian along the way. So when I guess contextually, when you think about these companies going into the US Strategic Tech Fund, recognize these are all very fast-moving companies with really high-quality lead venture investors. The only way to invest in these kinds of private companies is as part of a fund, and we give you that opportunity with the US Strategic Tech Fund. So let's hear about Hawkeye.
Great. So let's finish out the fabulous five here of Hawkeye 360. This is a fascinating company that AV has participated in successive rounds. Hawkeye 360 is building first of kind commercial satellites. And look, this is a company where you can read headlines that they're on the frontier in Ukraine, and the next week they're doing things in Hawaii and with oceans. And it's a versatile company that captures what we've said, dynamic needs in dynamic environments. And so just like Unstructured, there's core AI ML use cases, but just like other companies here, Red 6, they're doing really hard things building hardware. So Hawkeye 360 is a fascinating company. Encourage you all to read up on this one and all of these. There's just lots of great content to actually grapple with how strategic many of these are. So with that, gonna take the spotlight from the investment side of things into the ecosystem side of things. This civic mindset that we all have extends to community building. We believe strongly in bringing people together. All of you that are on this call are exactly what we mean, and we hope to see you in real life at future events. But last week, we hosted something for the ages that has never before been seen in the Big Apple. We brought together government, we brought together entrepreneurs, and we brought together giants in semiconductors. You don't need, unless you're living under a true rock. In fact, that's probably understating it, unless like somehow you have totally disengaged from the grid and information. Chips and semiconductors front and center in strategic tech considerations. And so we brought together the CHIPS program office from DC. This is one of their programming leads on the far left. We brought together Jay, a true luminary and rising star. He walks the stack, as they say, of chips. In other words, he can talk shop in deep tech hardware, but also talk at a software application layer. And we brought together NVIDIA. And of course, everyone knows NVIDIA, an absolute giant in the chip space. This is what we want to do. Bring you together first for the community, the education, and the civic contributions that result from all of that. So please, we're going to tell you about things like the Scout program that we're rolling out. If you want to put your hat in the ring, apply to that, you are welcome to. Please, we hope to see you all at future events as well. So that gives you a sense of the community building. It gives you a sense, as Laura said, the hard work that we do to build things. Now we want to go and move into just a little bit more of the 101 on venture. Some of you are brand new to this, and Laura is a veteran venture capitalist. She's also a previous CEO at companies, and so she really understands all aspects of venture. And so Laura can give a quick 101 on venture investing for those who are new or curious.
Absolutely. So it's pretty simple. Venture investing is smart investing. Venture capital has outperformed pretty much every indice over the past 5, 15, 25 years. Why? Because we are investing in companies that are fiery and growing fast, and we get in early with those companies as they grow. There is no correlation to the public, or largely uncorrelated to the public markets. And you need to think about the fact that there's much more value being created in the private markets than in the public markets. All of this to say that venture investing is a smart way to put your money to work in your portfolio, to add venture into it. And the US Strategic Tech Fund is obviously a great example of that. In addition, we're talking about a platform here, and this is Alumni Ventures. For those of you who don't know us, we're the single most active VC in North America. We are the third most active globally. We've raised $1.3 billion, and virtually every penny of that has come from individual accredited investors just like you. There's 10,000 of them. And on top of it, we've had some great returns, 15% IRR so far, and we're just getting started. Our returns are top quartile. This is on an important measure that I think really speaks to who our investors are, which is distributions to paid-in capital, the money coming back to you. So our comparison set here are the venture capitalists that you've all heard of, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, all the big name firms, as well as those you might not have heard of, but know that they're in that mix. And for us, we produce top quartile returns, and it's part of the value proposition back to you is that you're not only investing in the future, but you're also investing in an asset class that has high potential to bring those returns back to you. The way that we work at Alumni Ventures, it's called Alumni Ventures for a reason. We have 20 school funds, and we navigate those school ecosystems to bring back opportunities that we then vet and diligence and score and cross-score and get into the portfolio. So that process is extremely rigorous. We've put 1,300 companies into the portfolio so far in our first 9 years of existence, and that pipeline and that deal network is very robust. And as Pete mentioned, it's already put us on the map in the strategic defense arena with our investments so far, and those companies that we walk through are really great shining stars of where the potential can be in the future as well. Part of our model when we scrutinize each individual company is we look at the lead investors, and you've heard us refer to some of these, Andreessen, Khosla, NEA, Google Ventures, folks like that, where the lead investors are storied venture capital firms, and we unpack that expertise down to the layer of the actual individual partner who's leading the round that we join. And as a co-investor, this is part of our secret sauce. This is part of our unfair advantage, is our ability to not just navigate into these deals through the alumni network, but then choose the ones that we finally join, in part because of the lead investor and the quality of their expertise going into our companies.
So I'll close this out a little bit. I mean, we mentioned the Scout program a little bit already, but really the engine that Laura described is augmented with an extraordinary network of formal scouts that we partner with. A lot of these have entrepreneurial backgrounds, many have investment backgrounds, some are just very, very immersed in the innovation ecosystem. And we really have been hard at work in building a dream team, not just here on this bench, but also more broadly of folks that have their hands in the venture world. So these scouts, They are valuable extensions of the team. They help spot attractive investment opportunities. They make introductions with founders. They help vet companies, and they tap into subsectors that we've begun to preview. As we like to say, these are boots on the ground. So if this is something where if you feel you are deeply, deeply immersed in the venture ecosystem, feel free to reach out to myself, Drew, Laura, someone on the team, and we can share more about that. And that is the Scout program. So to close things out, I'll actually bring back at this point my colleague Darren. He is the elected official in his town, but also someone that is a critical member of the AV team. By now you get a sense already. What is the U.S. Strategic Tech Fund? This is a portfolio of venture capital blueprint companies that embolden, empower, and fortify U.S. interest. And this is beyond just finance, it is impact. And this is 15 to 20 companies that we intend to invest in the next year and a half or so. These are going to be companies that are robust in their diversification, in their business models, and in their sectors and geographies. And we are going to do what AV does best, build community and also try to be there for the journey. So we intend to do our best to secure pro rata rights and reserves for follow-ons, all that good stuff. But with that, I'll ask Darren to really close this out with a little bit more granular specifics, that if this piques your interest, how you can get involved as not just a community member, which we all invite you to already, but also as a potential investor, because there actually are some quick ways to get involved here. So Darren, over to you.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Darren Wiest. I'm a senior partner here. My role is to support the investment team on the investor-facing side of the house. So if you have questions, please schedule a call. Love to have a conversation and hopefully answer your questions. But a little bit about how we, what are the nuts and bolts of investing? How does the fund work? So the fund is going to be invested, I should say, as Pete said, into about 15, 20 companies. The minimum investment for the fund is $25K. The max is $3 million. It's a pretty broad window. The way the fund works, it's one investment in, one capital call, if you will. The fund will take about a year to be invested, except for reserves, which we'll use later on down the road for follow-on rounds. And then basically, as those companies exit throughout the life of the fund, they generally get acquired, sometimes an IPO. We'll get the proceeds from that sale and return the money along the way back to the investors. And that process happens throughout the life of the fund until the last company exits. So one investment in, distributions throughout the life of the fund, but of course we don't know what the dates of those will be. And there's many different ways folks can invest. So we try to make this very flexible. Most of our investors invest directly. You can invest with cash or ACH or wire. About a third of our investors invest via a self-directed IRA, because that timeline tends to line up with a lot of folks with their retirement. We also have a lot of investors that invest through a trust or an entity. And then finally, we have an offshore vehicle that allows folks that are non-US based investors to invest in the funds as well. So a lot of flexibility there. Hopefully there's a solution there that fits your portfolio as well. And the way the fund works in terms of the fee structure, like I said, it's one investment in. We charge the equivalent of a 2% annual management fee. For 10 years, the total management fee is 20% for the life of the fund. That's paid with your initial investment. 80% of the fund or your investment is invested in the companies. And then as those companies exit, that capital is returned to the investors. And if it's a profitable exit, meaning you as the investor get back your cost of capital in the company, plus any management fees applicable to that investment, anything over and above that would be profit, split 80% to you, 20% to us. So profit share when companies exit with a profit. And that process, again, happens throughout the life of the fund until the last company exits. So, the fund is structured as a 10-year fund. It's quite possible the fund could continue on into year 11 or even 12 if there are companies that haven't exited at that point, but your management fee is limited to the 10 years. So there's no additional management fee after 10 years. So, a lot of information about the nuts and bolts. Happy to have a conversation to talk you through it in more detail. Please schedule a call.
Thank you, Darren. So we are now going to take a handful of questions that have been submitted. But the headlines: get involved. Get involved as a community member. Get involved if you wish as an investor. Talk to Darren. Talk to myself. Talk to the rest of the team about this. But let's take a couple questions because there are some good ones in there. And Laura, maybe you can pick a couple that we can address now, but of course we can address any later as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. Laura, take us away.